he was at a window trying to kind of climb out of the jail because people were firing at him from within the jail, and people were also firing at him from outside the jail. Supposedly, his last words were, "My Lord and my God," according to the Mormon Church. But according to eyewitnesses, they were, "My Lord, oh Lord, my God, is there no help for the widow's son?" And what's interesting even further is that a lot of people have speculated that many of the fingers that were on those triggers shooting Joseph Smith had Masonic rings on them, because he had stolen the secrets of Masonry and run off and started his own Masonic temple, which is now called the Mormon Temple, because all the secrets that are inside the Mormon Temple are just, you know, warmed over Masonry. That's all it is. Okay, then next we'll go to tokens. And what do we mean by tokens? Well, these are the secret handshakes. And this is the way Masons may know one another in the dark as well as the light. Now here's an example. This is the pass grip of an entered apprentice. And how you do it is you make a pressure on the first knuckle with your thumb. Then the grip of an entered apprentice, this is first degree, is to have a pressure in the hollow between the two knuckles. Then second degree is pressure on the second knuckle. The grip of second degree is the hollow of the second and third knuckle. The third degree pass grip is the third knuckle. Then we have this. This is the third degree grip, which is called the strong grip of the lion's paw, or the grip of the lion of the tribe of Judah, or a Master Mason grip. And here you'll see it's kind of like, almost like you go like Mr. Spock, and you go like this. And that is the grip by which the Grand Master Hiram Abiff was raised from the dead. So this is the fundamental degree of the fundamental grip, of a Master Mason. Now there are grips for every one of these degrees, but we aren't going to go into all of them because frankly I don't remember all of them, and you'd probably be bored silly by the time I was done. But we are going to talk about some of the jewels that Master Masons wear by which they can recognize one another. This is probably the best known symbol of all Masonry, and I'm sure all of you have seen this either on buildings or on bumper stickers or on lapels or whatever. This is the ultimate symbol of the Masonic Lodge, of the Blue Lodge, and you see there the square and the compass. This is the square, this is the compass, and then of course the letter G. Now if you asked a Mason, what does that mean? What's that G stand for? He might say, I can't tell you, it's a secret. Or if he's being very, very forthcoming, he might say, well, it stands for geometry. Or he might even say, it stands for God. However, if you read the books that are in the Mason's library, and every Mason has access to these books, you will find out that this G actually stands for the principle of generativity, which is just a big word for the power of human beings to reproduce themselves. And that makes sense because if you read in those same books, you'll discover that the square and compasses symbolize the male and female reproductive organs. So that's what this actually symbolizes. Isn't that spiritual? Now, I'm going to show you a very secret symbol in Masonry that most of you, if you've seen it, you probably never knew what it meant. This will often be seen on like either cars or a lapel or a tie tack or something like that. This is called the two-ball cane, okay? And it doesn't mean the guys in the golf. I mean, I know some people look at that and they go, oh, it's a golf club. But no, it's a two-ball cane. And it's a joke, it's a pun, because the password of a Master Mason is Tubal-Cain, who is a character out of Genesis 3. He's the first artificer in cunning metalwork, and he's considered to be the very first Mason even before the flood. But let me show you a little trick here. Let's say, for example, you turn this upside down. It gives you a clue to the identity of the real God of Masonry. Okay. Then another thing that's very common, I'm sure some of you have seen these, are the wearing of rings. Masons will often wear rings or other jewelry to let other Masons know that they are in fact Masons. There's not a lot more I can say about that, but those are some typical Masonic rings. Now this is a symbol which is out of the York Rite 4th degree. Now, I apologize for how weird this symbol looks. I tried to take, Stan was talking about how hard it is, spiritual warfare, putting together one of these talks. I had to take 5 or 6 pictures of this to get one that looked this good. And it doesn't look good at all, I know, but I apologize for that. This is the sign of the Mark Master degree. And you'll notice, well, you won't notice because you can't see it, but around this circle here are letters. HTKS, STKS. And I get all these letters from people writing me and saying, what does this mean? What does this mean? Well, here's the big secret. This is the stamp of Hiram Abiff, okay? This circle that you see in the center of this odd-shaped thing. And it says, those stand for Hiram the widow's son sent to King Solomon. So that's what those letters mean, those initials. Now you'll notice it has an odd shape. And that's because this is a stone which the builders rejected that becomes the headstone of the corner. Again, another place where they take the glory away from Jesus and apply it to Hiram Abiff. But what the story behind this is supposedly after Hiram Abiff was killed, and we'll get into why he was killed later, they found this stone laying in the rubble of the temple when it was about to be completed. And they looked at it and they said, this stone isn't true. By that they mean the angles are wrong, it's not right angles. And they said, this stone is worthless, and they threw it away. The stone which the builders rejected, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So later on they finish the temple, and they're putting the arch up. And they look and they say, there's no stone to hold the arch together. And then they remembered, that stone. And so they go and they get it, and it becomes the headstone of the corner. And that's the whole point behind the Mark Master degree. Okay. Now this is another part of the York Rite which you'll see. This is the commandery. The Knight Templar commandery. And you'll notice the motto there is in hoc signo vinces. That's Latin. It means in this sign conquer. And basically the idea behind that is that supposedly Constantine, who was the first pope, he gets up there and he's fighting this battle at one point. He's not a Christian at this time, and he's losing the battle. He's the emperor of Rome. And supposedly this sign appears in the heavens of a cross. And underneath it are the words in hoc signo vinces, and this sign conquer. And so he went and painted crosses on all of his soldiers' shields, and then they won the battle. And then Constantine supposedly converted to Christianity. There's a lot more to that, but basically if you study the archaeology behind this, you will find that the cross that was painted was not the cross of Christianity. It was an Egyptian cross or an ankh. But that is the story behind that. Now this is supposedly the Christian degree of Masonry, but as we'll find out later, it's about as Christian as nothing. Now this is the Scottish Rite symbol. This is a symbol of the 32nd degree of the Scottish Rite, which is the other branch of Masonry. And you'll notice the motto there, spes mea in Deus est. That means, my hope is in God, and that sounds very pious, doesn't it? But you'll notice this strange eagle. He's got 2 heads. You don't know whether he's coming or going. And you'll notice this little top knot up here. Notice those little top knots on the 2 eagles. Those are going to be very important later, so don't forget those. Okay? Then another one we're going to look at. This is a symbol of the mystic shrine. And you'll notice here several important things. First of all, this is the scimitar, or the distinctive sword of Islam. Now the scimitar is a very sharp blade that's basically used to behead infidels. You see, Muslims had a very unique way of soul winning. They'd come up to someone and they would say, I want you to become a Muslim. Will you submit to Allah? And if you said no, they'd cut your head off. They got a lot of converts that way. Today, instead of using scimitars, they tend to blow people up a lot. But it's the same idea. It's called jihad, holy war. And if you die in the service of Allah, you will go straight to paradise. Now the moon is because Allah is a moon god. How many of you knew that? Allah is not the supreme Father God that we think He is. He is not the same as the God of the Bible, which everybody wants you to think. No, no, no. Allah is a rock. Allah is a rock and is a moon god. And of course this is the star of the goddess. So you have the moon god and the star goddess. What could be simpler? Now you'll see more quickly here, or more readily, the rest of the symbol on this one. This is the infamous fez, which is the sign of a Shriner. And you notice here, you can see a little better that this is actually a little Egyptian head, like of an Egyptian king, and that's supposed to be the pagan god Osiris. And of course, if you know your Bible, you'll understand how well God feels about the Egyptians. Egypt in the Bible, the Old Testament, is a symbol of carnality and depravity. Now, this is a symbol of the Eastern Star. And you'll notice that it is above other things, and we're going to look at this a lot more closely later, but for now, I'll just point out that it looks very much like a pentagram, which is a symbol of witchcraft, and it's turned upside down, meaning the one point is pointed downward, and that is uniquely a symbol of Satanism. It's a symbol which is used to cause the kingdom of Satan to be manifest in this world today. Okay, we talked about signs, tokens, now we're going to talk about words. These are the secret passwords of the 3 first degrees. The password for the entered apprentice degree is Boaz, for 2nd degree is Jachin, and for 3rd degree is Tubal-Cain. Now we'll talk about the main word of the Masons later. But for now, what I want to go into is some other ways that Masons might identify each other. Let's say, for example, I heard that there was a Mason running a store downtown. It was like, say, a jewelry store or something, and he gave discounts if he knew you were a brother Mason. So I would walk in there, and I would say something like this. I'd talk to the manager, and I'd say, I see you're a traveling man. And he would say, yes, I travel from west to east and from east to west again. And you would say, in search of what? And he would say, in search of that which was lost. And then you would know that you were both Masons, and you'd get the discount. Another way you might do that is to come into the store and say, I've heard that I can get a square deal here. Because, see, Masons always deal with one another on the square. Another way is to come in and say, do you know the widow's son? Now, of course, if you say this to somebody who's, you know, not a Mason, they just kind of look at you, okay, right, you know, why don't you go get a life, fella? And that's the end of it. But if he's a Mason, he knows that you are a Mason and you'll get whatever benefits you're looking for. And basically that's how much business is done. In a couple minutes we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about how Masons often use Masonry to grease the wheels of business and of making of deals and things like that. Okay, we've just been talking about the signs, the tokens, the words, the points of our entrance. The last one is probably the hardest to understand just from the way the term is, but points of your entrance is the way that a Mason stands, the way he approaches the altar in the east. And if you look, what you see up on the screen right now is the way an entered apprentice would approach the east. He has the heel of his right foot into the hollow of his left at right angles to one another. And that is a sign of an entered apprentice. Now, understand something. If I were to stand in a courtroom before a judge who was a Mason and put my feet in this way, he would know that I was at least an entered apprentice Mason. And he would be required by his oath to give me preferential treatment over my adversary in the courtroom. Now,